Hello, welcome back to Stripecon. We are here at the workshop track and we will hear three interesting talks about Elemental, about internationalization, and about Silverstripe, beginning Silverstripe itself. And we are starting with James.
Good afternoon.
Hello, James. Hello to Scotland.
Scotland,
How's the
indeed.
weather in Scotland?
You will probably not be surprised to hear it's currently raining.
Yeah, it's raining here too. So
Oh well.
it's just Northern Europe. So we are hearing about Elemental. Thank you very much for taking this talk. We were searching for someone to speak about Elemental.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, got a few slides to start with, and then we'll dive into a nice big live coding demo, hopefully.
We're looking forward to it. Have fun. The stage is yours.
Thanks, Andy. Right, let's get cracking. So I will share and hopefully we're good to go. So I'm James. I'm a freelance web developer based in Edinburgh, sunny Scotland. I've been building Silverstripe-based websites for about 11 years now, which sounds like a very long time. Today, I'd like to give you a beginner's guide to Elemental, which is the official content block module for Silverstripe that, when installed and set up by a developer, provides CMS users with basically a much more powerful and flexible page editing experience. So just to quickly go over what we're going to cover today, we're going to start, and I'm going to just explain what Elemental is for anyone that hasn't heard of it. Then we are going to go through how to actually install Elemental on an existing website. I'll go over how to install third-party content blocks into the site, and we'll also look at creating your own custom content block for use in Elemental. And I'll finish on a few extra tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. I'll try to keep an eye on the questions and answer any at the end of each section. I'm sure Andy will grab any that I miss at the end. So just to make it clear, I'm assuming here that you're going to be already comfortable with setting up a Silverstripe based website. That's including installing modules using Composer and working with data objects and templates. If you're not, a good place to start is the official Silverstripe lessons created by the great Uncle Cheese. Also, I believe Herbert's doing a talk later this afternoon, part 2 of his Starting with Silverstripe CMS, so that would be well worth checking out too. Right, let's get on to it. So what is Elemental? For those that haven't heard of it. So by default, every Silverstripe site and page basically just has a single WYSIWYG content area where the content editors can do their thing. It's easy to use, but relatively restrictive, and things can get particularly messy if content editors try and end up doing anything more complex than just aligning an image to the right-hand side, for example. It can also be a bit tricky especially if they do try to create complex alignments of images. It can be tricky to end up controlling that on mobile, for example. But then equally, if a client wants to have a page which has, say, a photo gallery on it and maybe a form at the bottom, it's up to them to then come to you as the developer, and you have to create that photo gallery with form page type. And that becomes quite restrictive, because if they then want another page type, which is a photo gallery with maybe an embed widget on it, then you'd end up having to create a whole new page type, which includes just those two things. Well, the answer to that is Elemental. When you install Elemental, it effectively replaces the main content block, the main content field on a page with this blocks editing interface. And it allows content authors to build up their content for the page using multiple different types of content block. They can enter their content, and then they can build up the page with different sets of content and arrange them in whatever order they wish. So that's Elemental in a nutshell. Let's just dive straight in and get our hands dirty, shall we? Okay. So I've put together this little website. It's a basic Silverstripe site, which just has a few basic standard pages, and it's got a data object which is looped through here with a very original name. I'm sure you'll agree. So let's start off and get Elemental installed on this website. So if I open up the Elemental repository, so Elemental you'll see is it's officially supported Silverstripe module. And if we browse down the README here, we'll get to the installation. So it's exactly the same as installing any other Silverstripe module. You install it using Composer, and they've happily provided the command to do so. So let's go ahead and copy that, and let's bring up our code, open up a terminal, and I'm just going to paste in that command and run it, and that will go ahead and install Elemental. So Elemental is now installed on the site, but by default, it's not going to have any effect until we activate it as such. And to do so, we need to tell it which page types Elemental should be used on. So the standard way well, the first way, let's say, of installing Elemental is telling it to take over that main content field across all your pages, and just every page will have an Elemental UI in place of that main content page. Alternatively, you could choose to create effectively a separate blocks page type, which would include Elemental, and you can leave that main content field alone for your other page types, and that would allow you to selectively create blocks pages as and when you need them, but you've still got that single WYSIWYG field on your pages if you want to keep things simple or deal with existing content. So let's go ahead and install it using the first way, where we'll get it to take over the content field on all the pages. So jumping back into the README, and you'll see that what we need to do is add this into our config YAML. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to jump into here, and let's just keep things tidy. Elemental.yaml. The config files you can call them whatever you wish. It's the content that counts. And we're going to paste this in. So this line simply says we want to apply the Elemental page extension to the page class. So basically every page type that you've got on your site. So let's save that, and let's go ahead and do a dev build on the site. And now if we jump into the CMS, and let's create a new page type, just a standard page. Let's create that. And you'll see that now, instead of this WYSIWYG field, we've got our Elemental UI here, where we can simply click on Add Block. By default, it comes with a single content block, but we'll get into adding extra blocks shortly. And when you click on the block type that you want to create your new empty block. You can click on it to edit it, enter in your desired content. And as easy as that, you now have Elemental installed on your website. Go ahead and publish. Now, you'll see that we've added our content here, but the actual content is not appearing on the page yet. So that's because the second part we have to do is update our templates. So if we jump back into the README, and you'll see here, it says that we need to add in Elemental area in place of what was the original content field. So let's go ahead and find my main page template in here. And in place of content, I'm going to pop in Elemental area, jump back here. So now if we refresh, you'll see that this content from our block now appears on the page. We can even tick this checkbox here, and this will go ahead and show the title of the content block. So very simply, that's us getting Elemental up and running on the site with a basic content block, the one that's included with the site. Now, what about the existing content? So these pages had content on them already, but if we click over, say, to the locations page, you'll see that there's no block. There's no blocks there, and there's no content on the page. Luckily, Elemental includes a task that will automatically migrate any existing content from the content field into a new content block. So when we run that task, it will just go through all our pages, find the content, move it out into a new block. So now if I jump back to our site and refresh it, you'll see it's now gone ahead and created this, this new content block with the title Auto Migrated Content, and there's the content that we had before, and it's now appearing on our page nicely. I probably want to just rename that to something a bit nicer. There we go. So, just to show you a few basics of working with Elemental, I'll get into some of the other functionality that you can do with it in the CMS once we've got a few more blocks in place. But on this page, for example, what I might want to do is split up the Edinburgh and Glasgow into their own blocks. So if I grab the Edinburgh content, and actually I'm going to move that Glasgow up into the title, we'll say display you, and we'll add a new content block where I will plop in my Edinburgh content, Edinburgh up there. So if we save that, there we go, we've now got Edinburgh and Glasgow. And now that they're content blocks, we can easily just rearrange them by dragging and dropping them, putting Glasgow at the top. Or say we wanted to add a new location, such as Aberdeen, we can click Add Block at the top there, or actually if you move the mouse between any content blocks, you can click on the plus sign that appears, and it will add a content block directly in there, that position. There we go. Okay, so that's the basics, real simple basics of getting Elemental up and running. Before we dive into looking at all the third-party content blocks and how to install them, let me know if there's any questions regarding the install side. Otherwise, I will continue. So, jumping back over to our repository, you'll see it actually lists a few officially supported blocks that we can add in. So let's go ahead and have a look at this banner block here. So each different block type that you can install is installed exactly the same way as installing any other Silverstripe module using Composer. So let's go ahead, copy that, paste it into our terminal. That will go ahead and install that particular module. We'll go back and do a dev build. And now if we refresh the page, we'll see that we've now got more types of block to deal with. So let's go ahead and add this banner block that we just added to the site. And you'll see that when we click on it, this banner block has got a few different fields going on. We've got a title, we've got a file, which I think is an image, and a call to action link. So let's add some content in here. Let's choose a nice image of Edinburgh Castle. And I'm going to get suggestions that Edinburgh is going to be the ideal location for the next Stripecon. But let's add in some content, and let's get a call to action, maybe linking over to the Contact Us page. There we go. So if I go ahead and save that, and boom, we've now got a banner on our page installed from this third-party module. Now, as with any Silverstripe module, you will nearly always have to make some tweaks and customize the actual templates of the blocks to suit your site. And that's done in largely the same way as any other modules. So I will show you how to do that. Let's jump back into our code. So to do so, we need to locate the templates of the particular module. So let me just remind myself what we're looking for. We're looking for Silverstripe Elemental Banner Block. So let's jump into our vendor directory. And if we find Silverstripe Elemental Banner Block, and if we jump into templates, and I'm going to copy the templates and paste them into our app templates folder. And now in here, you can see we've got a copy of this banner block template. So let's just make a few quick tweaks. What we might want to do is adjust the opacity of the image. Maybe, I don't know why that button is red in the original style sheet. It's probably to warn you to change it to your own styles. So let's go ahead and add it and set that to our primary button styles. So let's save that, and if we get back to the site, And this time we do a flush because we've added our own template. And there we go, that looks a lot nicer. So now we've got this cool banner block that we can easily add banners throughout the site, and we can rearrange them, put them in different parts of the page, put them throughout the website. So another useful module, user forms. So you may already be familiar with the Silverstripe user forms module. I'm sure most people that have any experience with Silverstripe already do. And it allows you to create form pages on your website. So a page that has a custom form on it that you can set the fields in the CMS. The Elemental user forms block basically allows you to have a block which has a form within it. So you can place forms within any page. So let's go ahead and install this. Bring up our terminal, pop in our install line, do a def build, and jump back to the CMS. So for this one, let's jump over to the Contact Us page. Push that. And now when we click Add Block, we've got our form block. We'll click on that. So before I jump in to edit this, you'll notice that up until now, when I've been editing a block, when you click on it, the fields load in line. So basically, you don't end up leaving the editing form for this page. The fields load straight away. And when you collapse the block, the fields hide. And that works great for the more simple blocks. But whenever you've got anything that's a bit more advanced, so maybe a block includes a grid field, it needs to, grid fields won't work inline, so they need to basically work with that disabled. And the user forms block is an example of one of these. So you'll notice that when I click on the user forms block to edit it, instead of opening inline, it opens up in its own screen. So we can now go ahead and create our form. So if we create, say, an inquiries form, and let's just quickly add a few fields. And we'll say name, email, and message. Save those. Let's go ahead and set the number of rows on the message to 5. And let's jump back to our Contact Us page. And you'll see that just like that, we've now got a form on our Contact Us page that we can actually move around in relation to our other blocks. Publish you. Okay. Jumping back and having a look at other blocks that are available. So there's a few other blocks listed here, and one of them is this collection of blocks. I really wouldn't recommend bulk installing blocks like that unless you're just having a play with Elemental, because it's more than likely that you'll have to customize a lot of the templates for your particular site. So it's much better to pick and choose the blocks that are going to be relevant for a particular site, and then customize those contents, those templates appropriately. But let's quickly jump in here, and just so that we've got another block to play with, let's quickly add in our embedded code block. So again, up over to terminal, install that, click dev build, and now we have got the ability to easily add in a widget or an embedded code of any kind into any position on any page of the website. So that's something that's always been tricky to do otherwise, because dealing with embed codes inside the WYSIWYG, unless they were very simple, has always led to issues. So, so now we've got our embed code block. So other than these, where are we? Let's jump back to our GitHub. So other than this list of modules that are included in the README here, you can, one good way of finding Elemental blocks to install on your site is using packages. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with Packagist already. If not, it is the main repository that Composer uses. So basically, Packagist is you can search Packagist for all the libraries that you can install via Composer. So if we search for Elemental in Packagist, and then what we can actually do is if we filter it by package type and set it to Silverstripe vendor module, this will now show us all Silverstripe modules that include the word Elemental. So you can have a browse through here and have a look at all the blocks that other people have created that you can use on your site. You could even restrict the search a bit more if you're looking for a particular type of module. For example, this one here looks quite nice. Look, a nice photo gallery block. So you would click through onto the README page, check it out, and then we can go ahead and install it. Again, as always, dev build. And now, if we go ahead and refresh the page, we've got a gallery block. And so that's a really quick and easy way. So again, this is one which has got inline editing disabled because of the grid field that it uses. So let's add a customer photos block, and let's just upload a bunch of photos. There we go. So if we go ahead and publish that, jump back to our page. In fact, what I'll do, let me just jump to the actual site. Just like that, we've got a whole photo gallery on our page, and we can insert photo galleries anywhere throughout the site. So hopefully, if you've not come across, well, if you've not used Elemental before, you're starting to get a feel as to the power that it can offer, especially when you get into start creating your own content blocks. Let's where are we? Yes. So next, before we get into some of the other things that CMS users can do when managing blocks in the CMS, I see I've got some praise. Thanks, Werner, for my gallery module. Inline editing. It's worked when I've created basic blocks. Okay, cool. Looks like we're all good to go. So, showing you some of the other functionality. So, in our actual page, so we've already dealt with, you can click to add a block. If you start to get a lot of blocks, you can search within there. It's obviously, you can easily drag and drop to arrange blocks. You can individually, actually, if I do this on an inline one, it's more self-explanatory. In the menu here, you can unpublish specific blocks. So that's actually a good way of being able to unpublish a specific part of a page, something that you couldn't do before. So now our content, you can see it exists in draft. If I go into published, that text content isn't there. Do note that by default, when you click on the publish button for a page, it will publish any unpublished blocks. You can duplicate blocks, which is good if you're trying to have a same block with similar formatting. And they're fully supportive of the archiving system in Silverstripe. So if we go ahead and archive a block, you can easily find it in the archive section by clicking on the blocks tab in the top right hand corner. And there's our deleted block that we can then click and restore and take us back through. Equally, save, unpublish, duplicate. In settings, by default, you can actually set custom CSS classes on a block. Now, it's not the most user-friendly way of allowing content editors to make adjustments to blocks. So it's probably something that you would only want to do on edge cases. So you could go ahead and add in any specific classes that you wanted to either override or adjust for any edge cases of block. But other than that, actually, one thing I'll show you, if we jump into reports, when you install Elemental, it comes with 2 reports. One of them lists all the different types of block, or element, I think is the official potential term, that you've installed on your site, along with their name and description and how many types of that you've got across your site. And then the other one is the actual content blocks in use report, which basically lists all the content blocks that content editors have created using those types throughout the site. So you can easily get a glance as to what's what. Right, so a question from Johannes, can you use one block in multiple pages? There is a way to do that, and I will show you that a bit later on. Very good question. By default, it's tried to, it basically gets kept simple. So it's designed so that out of the box, you would just have one block per page, and if you wanted to add it to another page, you would duplicate. You would have to create it separately, but there is a way to do that, so I'll show you. I'll show you how to do that. Okay. Oh, the history feature I should probably touch on. If we jump back into one of our pages, when you jump into the history tab for a page, and click on a particular version of that page, each block fully supports obviously versioning, and you can use the CMS to browse back through different versions of that block. So you'll notice that this block here, we can click on block history, view all the different versions of it, and when we find the one we want, we can revert just that block to that point in time, which is very, very helpful. Again, just being able to revert a specific part of a page back to a specific point in time is something that this module obviously provides without anything, any more complexities going on before you get into your own blocks. So Oscar says, is there a possibility to use shortcodes instead of duplicating blocks? Shortcodes, not that I'm sure there is, not that I've necessarily come across. There is a good way of creating, of having a block on multiple pages of the site, and it's called a virtual block, which might be self-explanatory, but I will demonstrate that shortly. But before we get there, and Johannes, yeah, having the same block used in different pages, yeah, when you've got when one of them is like the master block and then you've used it throughout pages, it obviously does become more complex for the content authors to be able to keep up. But I'll show you how the virtual block works a bit later on. Okay, right, let's get to the fun part, which is creating our own custom block. So what I'll quickly show you is on the website at the moment, we have this vehicles page, and it lists all the vehicles that this car rental company offers. And that is simply a standard page that loops through data objects, which are managed in a model admin. So fairly standard Silverstripe stuff. So how about we create a latest vehicles block where they can show off the latest vehicles that have been added to their fleet. Right, so let's start by jumping back to the elemental README, and if we scroll down, we will find defining your own elements. So let's go ahead and copy this skeleton. And so just like creating a data object, we need to create our class. So if I jump into the code here, what I'm going to do, just keep things tidy, is create a nice blocks folder. And within there, let's create latest vehicles block.php. Okay, let's pop in that skeleton code that we got from the README. And let's just add in my namespace. Let's set the class name. And then all this, everything that you should see here should be fairly familiar if you've already used to dealing with data objects. So we will need to add in our singular name and also the plural name and a description. So currently the description appears in that report that gives you an overview of the different blocks that are installed on the website. So that's where you'll see the description. The most important part actually though is is the get type method here. So this is where it gets the name of the block when it displays it in the elemental UI. So when you click the add block button, the name of the block, it doesn't currently get it from singular name. I think there is a pull request out currently and some discussion on that. But for the time being, we need to return it in get type and without the block, without the word block at the end, otherwise everything will just be block, block, block. So let's go ahead and save that. Now, a couple of extra bits I like to add. First of all, let's give our block an icon. So if you're not aware already, you can actually pull up the storybook for Silverstripe and find all the icons that are included in its icon font. And if we scroll down, you'll see that there's a whole selection of lovely block icons, specifically designed for use with elemental blocks. So let's find one we like. Maybe, what about block promo? Let's use for this one. So let's jump back and pop that in there. And then next, always best practice to add in a table name. This is the table name that we used when it scaffolds the database. Without this, I think it just uses the namespace and class name, which in some instances can end up being too long potentially for database engines. Okay, so we've got the basics in there now. So why don't we go ahead and do a dev build and see how things are looking in the CMS. So we jump back here. So let's jump into the home page this time. And let's go ahead and click on Add Block. And you can see here we go. We've got our latest vehicles block with our nice little icon that we chose. So if we go ahead and create one, and you'll see currently by default, it has a title, and you can display or not display that title on the page. So what we want to do now is build up the fields in here to collect the information for the content authors to actually display the block. So you do it exactly the same way as when you create a page or a data object. So you define what database fields you want to use. For this one, I want the CMS users to be able to say how many vehicles this block is going to display. So I'm going to take in a number to display as an int. And also what we might do is give the ability for the block just to have some basic content at the top of it. So HTML text content. Okay. So now if we do a dev build and refresh the CMS, let's see how our block is looking. There we go, that's looking better. We've got a top content field, we've got number to display field. Okay, so if we put in some basic content, let's call it our newest vehicles. Let's display 3. Click save. Right, so there's a few things that we could actually improve here. This content area is massive. So as in the same way as when creating pages and data objects, you'll notice that it's just scaffolded the fields automatically, but we still have the ability to override that or define them manually yourself. So in this case, let's go ahead and editor. Let's go ahead and actually define how we want the HTML editor field for top content to look, because it would be much nicer if this only displayed 5 rows, and then actually we still want it to appear above the number to display. That's what I call it, isn't it? Okay, so now if we jump back here and refresh the CMS, see how things are looking. Okay, let's just refresh the CMS again, see how things are looking. Oh, there's something wrong. So this field. What have I missed? This didn't happen in rehearsals. HTML editor field, top content. Set, oh, so it should be set rows, not row. There we go. Let's try again. That's better. Okay. So that's looking nice, looking good. Right, we've got our content in, but nothing is appearing in our template. So first thing we need to check is our template itself. So let's find our homepage template, which is in here. And we have not replaced the content with the elemental area tag. So that's the first thing to do. Jump back here and refresh. Right, here we go. So this is it now complaining that we've got this block, latest vehicles, but it can't find a template for it. So it doesn't know what to do. So the next thing we need to do is create our template for our latest vehicles block. So to do so, we will go ahead and back up in app. Let's go ahead and create our template. So in templates, let's create a new folder. of our namespace, Sparkle Spider / my site. And in here, let's create a new latest vehicles block.ss file. Okay, so let's start off really simple. Let's just pop the title of the block in, just to make sure that we've done everything there correctly. So if I jump back here and do a flush, because we've added a new template, and there we go. So now it's displaying the title of our block. Right. Now you notice every block has that checkbox to display the title on the actual page or not. And so we want to add that ability, and that is using the Boolean show title. What else do we want to use? Content. So we want to add in top content, and we want to loop around our, let's say, top vehicles. Now, just to save some time, we've already got this vehicle holding page, which includes a vehicle card. So I'm just going to pop that template in there. And now we can go ahead and see how that is looking. Probably get rid of the flush next time. Okay, so we've got that, and we've got that, but it's not looping through our vehicles. Why is that? Because we haven't defined what this top vehicles is yet. So we need to do that in our block. So back in our block class, let's go ahead and create a top vehicles function. Let's return vehicle, let's get them all, but let's sort them by created, ascending order, and let's limit by this number to display. Okay, so let's jump back here and refresh, see how we're getting on. Here we go, we've got our newest vehicles, and we've got our three. Let's jump back to our website here and have a look at it properly. Our newest vehicles, we've got our three newest vehicles added there. So what we might want to do, just to expand on that, we might want to add in a card baddie, for example. Okay, what's going on here? It's not playing now. I was expecting it. Card. There we go. That's not even what I wanted to do. Okay, so let's just very quickly add in card body, make this look a little bit nicer. That is a card header. Put that down here. You in there, and maybe even add a can't type and talk at the same time. Primary button to view all vehicles. So I'm obviously using Bootstrap 5 on this particular project. So you would just use whatever your front end was to do. There we go, that's nice. So that's now more contained, so you can actually see that it's all together in that one block, and that block can be reused throughout the site. Oh, I've just noticed I've missed something. So back in the CMS here, you'll see that it says no preview available, which isn't very good, is it? So it's always good to specify a preview for your block so that CMS authors can quickly find a particular block that they're looking for if they're trying to compare it to what the content on the actual page actually is. So to do so, let me slot into our block class, this particular code snippet. This is I've basically grabbed from the default content block, but basically you need to define in the schema the content, which is what it uses as the summary. So we've got our field here, and I want to basically just say use the top content field and summarize it. So basically get a maximum of 20 words from that. So now if we go back and refresh, there we go. It now says check out the newest additions to our fleet. So that's much nicer. Okay, right. So that's the basics of building your own content block. To summarize, we created our class, added in our standard names, descriptions, icon, table, specified the database fields as we're used to doing, and customized the CMS fields, made sure to return the name of the block in get type, and set up our summary. And then other than that, we just created our template file, and voila, you have a block. Okay, so any questions in the chat? Let's have a look. Extensions, VS Code extensions I'm using for Silverstripe icons and file types. I don't know off the top of my head, but I will get that for you. And Herbert's asking about my VS Code Silverstripe snippets. I haven't made those publicly available. They do need a lot of refining, but at least the ones that I don't use often, but potentially someday if you're lucky. Okay. So what I'd like to show you quickly now, I briefly mentioned before that you could have blocks as being able to edit them inline, or you could disable that mode for more advanced blocks. So let's very quickly go ahead and create a block where this is disabled. So I'm just going to duplicate this latest vehicles block, and I'm going to call it vehicles block. Let's create a block where CMS users can specify exactly which vehicles they want to display within that block. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly update those bits. Vehicles block. So what we're not going to need, actually, we're not going to need number to display. We'll just call that one vehicles. We're not going to need that. The rest should all be the same. And let's go ahead and duplicate the template. Vehicles block. I'm just going to call that vehicles, because what we're going to do in this vehicles block is we're going to say this block not has one, let's do many vehicle, so just a car really, shouldn't I? Many vehicle, which is vehicle, again, vehicle. Oh yeah, there we go. Okay, and then what we can do in here is add in our grid field. So open our grid field here, vehicles, keep it on the main tab. What we'll do, instead of using record editor, we'll use relation editor so that we can choose from existing vehicles that are already in the site, because we don't, rather than having to create new ones when we create this block. Let's import our classes, and lastly, I need to add on into our vehicles class. Where are we? Data objects vehicle. Each vehicle, let's do belongs many to, let's say, vehicles blocks. Okay. Maybe a miracle if this works now, first time, but let's see. So if we did our build and refresh the CMS, yep, I've done something wrong. Vehicles not exist on vehicles block. Vehicles block. Oh, it's because I called it vehicle. Come on. There we go. Right, and we've got a vehicles block. Perfect. Now, I've just realized I've forgotten to add the key part here that I was trying to demonstrate. And that key part is, if we jump back into here, in order to disable inline editing for a particular block, you simply add in the static inline editable and set it to false. So now let's go ahead and just flush that, and we can hopefully now demo this non-inline editable block. So that when we click on it, it opens not inline. We can say featured vehicle, vehicle, vehicles, and then we can get the content editors to choose specific vehicles. So maybe the Volvo and the BMW. There we go. So now if we go ahead and look at our homepage, we've got a featured vehicle with our Volvo and our BMW. It all works nicely. So there we go. We've created a non-inline editable block. Right. So that's the bulk of it. I want to just quickly go through some extra tips and tricks I learned along the way. So one of which was just asked about before is the virtual block. So let me very quickly show you the virtual block. You notice back in Silverstripe here, sorry, the Elemental repository, we've got a link through to our Elemental virtual block. So let me show you how that works. If we install this on the site in the usual way, do dev build. And for this, let's jump over to the locations page. And if we add block, and we'll see that we've now got virtual. So when we click to edit virtual, it opens up, and it basically asks us to locate an existing block that we can locate by search. So for this, let's say I want to type in inquiries. So this is the inquiries block, the user form that I created earlier. So let's select that, go ahead and click publish. And as simple as that, we now have, open it up, we now have that form both on the locations page and on the contact us page. There it is. So if you were to go into the contact us page and edit that block, those changes would also obviously take effect on the location page for that block. So that's how you would currently use the same block through multiple pages. So currently, you've seen I've been adding blocks in, and they've in the CMS they appear one below the other, and that's how they're appearing on my page. You obviously have complete control of the template code behind that and the CSS. So there's no reason that you couldn't apply a CSS grid to the way the blocks display. They don't need to appear one on top of the other. There is also a block called the list block, which is a very basic block, but it basically allows you to create a block and then create more blocks inside of it. And that's all it does out of the box, I believe. But you can then adjust the templates to say how you want to display those blocks inside of it. So instead of the blocks inside of a list block being on one on top of the other, you might have them side by side in a row. So it does give you the ability to almost create more complex layouts if you wish to go down that route. A quick tip, if you're ever dealing with Elemental and suddenly it stops loading in the CMS, like you refresh the page and it very quickly just flashes with a loading indicator, but the actual Elemental UI does not appear. First thing to check is whether you have renamed a block. If you change the class name of a block and you've already got existing blocks which use the old class name, then Elemental will just say, can't find that block anymore, and it will just fail to load. And no amount of dev building or anything like that will fix it. You will need to either rename the block back or go into the database and update the block name to the new block name in there. That's something that yeah, without knowing that, you'll be scratching your head for a while. I think I'm going a bit longer than I'd initially planned, so I'll show you quickly. Just a few questions coming in. Does user form work really well with virtual element? I hope so. I think I did try it out. Let's go to our locations. Possibly. I think we'll say possibly for that question. it doesn't submit, yes, possibly. So that may well be something that I missed. Again, there's probably extra bits that you need to do for some more complex blocks when using the virtual block. So using virtual blocks, you could have an unpublished page that stores all the original blocks. Yes, I don't see why not. You could instruct your CMS authors to create a new block in the unpublished page and then just use virtual blocks throughout the site. It obviously may add some overhead if you're only actually having some blocks that are only available in one place throughout the site, but it would certainly be a way, I suppose, to centralize things and keep things a bit tidier. Johannes asks, do you know of samples of exposing the blocks over GraphQL? Is the model behind it usable for something like that, or would you have to build wrappers around it? Good question. Nothing I've done directly myself. What I can say is that there are a lot of things already built into Elemental. So it includes an indexer for Solr, for example, if you're dealing with searching for blocks. So it would surprise me if there wasn't a way. In fact, I'm sure in earlier talks today there was mention of using getting content from Elemental, even in Uncle Cheese's blog the other day about the headless side. So it would surprise me if it wasn't possible to get the information out over GraphQL from the content blocks. Right. What I will very quickly show you is the alternative way of installing Elemental or setting up Elemental. So rather than applying it to every page on the site, what you could do is simply create a new page type and call it, say, blocks page.php. And just there's nothing elemental here. That's just a basic empty standard page in Silverstripe. And then what you would do in the config is you would say, don't apply it to page, but apply the elemental page extension to just the blocks page. And so now all the original pages would be left alone with their standard WYSIWYG. But if you did wish to add in new pages that used Elemental, then you can simply create them as a blocks page and go ahead and set it up that way. And that means you're not having to worry about converting an existing site to use Elemental. And it also means that, if anything, adding Elemental does add a slight overhead to creating a basic page for let's say, simple page editing, because you're having to create an empty content block every time just to create a basic page. And so in some scenarios, depending on the CMS users, it may be preferable to have that standard page type as default and only use a blocks page when necessary. I'll also just show you this handy snippet. If we do have our blocks page, I've got, let's bring that in properly. This on before write function, if you would convert an existing page from just a page to a blocks page, and it's got some content, it will go ahead and automatically create a content element in Elemental and copy through that content, because otherwise you effectively lose the content when you change the page type from a page to a blocks page, whereas this will do it automatically for you. And again, that's only if you're doing it on a separate blocks page type, because otherwise you would use the migration script. Okay. Right, finally, I just want to touch on a few kind of advanced things that Elemental can do. I'm not going to show them off, so don't worry. So far today, we've dealt with each page having a single Elemental area. So that's a single position on the page for you to insert blocks. So if I pull up the homepage, for example, currently the blocks are in a single position there. It is possible and supported for you to have multiple Elemental areas. So you would have two instances of the block editing UI in the page, in the CMS. So say you wanted to have blocks at the top of the page, something in the middle, say you were looking through some data objects, and then something at the bottom, some more blocks at the bottom, then you could have an extra Elemental area there. Be aware that you can also edit the wrapper templates So in Elemental, you will find the Elemental area template. So this is the one that just loops through all the blocks on a page. You can edit that as you wish. There is also the element holder. So this is what will automatically surround your blocks template or any blocks template when it's repeated on a page. So you've got control over that. You'll notice there is some basic inbuilt functionality for having blocks of different styles. So say you wanted to have a dark block and a light block with a background. There's some basic functionality in there for you to hook into. You can also, as I mentioned, you've got the, you can integrate it with search, especially Solar. You can enable different block types for different pages on your site if you wish. So you can have a whole load of different types installed, but you can choose which ones are available to content authors on different types of page. So it gives you some control there. Okay, so that is me. I doesn't look like there's any final questions. One thing I will do, if I just open up you, take a look at this link here. I'll post it in the chat afterwards. This will include all the links that I've talked about today and a few of the extra code snippets that that might come in handy. But otherwise, I hope it was insightful.
Thank you very much, James. Very good. Very good summary of everything Elemental.
No worries.
That's, yeah, Johannes said it. It's exactly what we needed because it's the information is out there, but it's distributed among different sites.
Yes.
And I just want to answer the question of Johannes about GraphQL. It's possible. I'm using GraphQL with Elemental, and but I'm using GraphQL 3 at the moment, so I have to do tricks to get at this. But this was a main point of discussion between me and Ingo and Uncle Cheese, how to make GraphQL better. The main point was Elemental, so that you can get a page with all elements and don't lose the strict typing. Yeah. Thank you very much, James. You answered all questions during the talk, so
great. Cool.
It was very good.
No worries at all. Thank you, Andy.
Yes, I hope I see you at the bar later on.
Sounds good to me. Sounds good to me.
Goodbye.